Hello, friends. Oh my goodness, it's such a beautiful day. I couldn't help but take a beautiful walk. And I got Bonnie and little Miss Boots with me. Puppies are home. Just couldn't help myself. I thought I'd take you guys with me. It's just like perfection today, especially right now. A little breezy. Very little wind, but just kind of nice. Perfect temperatures. Everything's turning green. And how are you guys doing? You getting through this little lockdown thing? We're getting over the hump. Only a few more months to go. And then we'll be free until the next virus comes along, huh? I don't know. Let's hope everything will be wonderful. Everything will be fine. And of course it will be for us. But you know something? As usual, I don't have any script or anything. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about, but I thought I wanted to talk a little bit about salt today. That's going to be the theme. And you're going to... I think you'll learn something about salt. Isn't it amazing? We've always got something that's so secret and hidden and no one's ever knew this information before. How could we be in the dark about so many things? And wait till you find out about salt. This is such a huge thing. And I've been saying this for a couple, 3 years. I've been talking about this. I think I had a video a couple years ago and some other videos that I've talked about how dangerous salt is. So, you know, if you want to know, well, can you trust what the government says, or scientists, nutritionists, or anyone? Can you trust them? No. Well, then how can we trust you, Dave? I mean, you don't even have a degree in the university. You ain't got a PhD. We can't trust the PhD. And how are we going to trust you? Well, I don't want you to trust me at all. See, because I think when remember, we've been talking about how if you could, well, yesterday we talked about if you had a mathematical formula that could prove your existence, you wouldn't believe it. It's some things just require your own sort of enlightenment. You have to know it within yourself. You can't really just, some things just can't be taught by someone else. You can point somebody in the right direction, but it's an inner illumination. So I think it's pretty much that way with everything, because if you tell somebody something and it's not making any sense, it's falling on deaf ears, as they say. But if you can give somebody maybe a parable, give them a picture. That's the only way you can really teach, is giving somebody a picture. You say, well, that guy's a great teacher. He has the art of teaching. The science is not teaching you. They're telling you. They're just making statements. Well, it's so many million, zillion, quadrillion light years away to that star. And, this is what gravity is, times the square root of 4, times that by r equals pi. And we're like, what the hell does pi have to do with this? Apple pie or cherry? I don't get it. So, I mean, you're just being told something, you're not understanding it. That doesn't prove their pedigree gives them no credence. Because what you're needing to know is your own inner understanding. You need to understand. And so, sometimes when you give a parable, what you're doing is you see a picture, you have the truth, the light, the vision, And you want to tell them and describe to them what that vision is. You say, well, there's a beautiful mountain, there's a beautiful stream, and a deer comes running along, and people see that and they go, oh yeah, I get that. That's beautiful. I understand what you're saying, man. But if you say, well, r times equals 3 by the square root of p, we don't know what you're talking about. We're going to take your word for it, more or less. So I don't want you to take their word for it or my word for it. But let me hear. I have this vision in my head. I have this information. That's what prophets did in the day. They received a vision. And then they told the vision. They interpreted it. I'm just trying to interpret a beautiful picture for you. And at the same time, I'm going to tell you the whole picture so you can see it for yourself. I'm just going to be someone who's testifying to you. I'm going to give you my testimony. Because I'm going to say, look, I saw this beautiful thing and I want you to see it. I give you my testimony, this is what it looked like, and then I'll tell you where you can go see it. That's how I think we're supposed to learn. The teachers in the days of Christ were not, scientists in this true sense of the word as we're using it today. But what we're going to talk about is salt. Like I said, there's going to be doctors that are going to tell you this and that about salt. And you're going to go to the store and you're going to look on labels and it's going to have salt. And scientists are going to say, doctors and scientists are saying you need 2,000 some odd milligrams of salt every day. And that's a complete lie. I think the easiest way to prove that, and by the way, this is important that you hear this, because it's not just, well, oh, the doctors are lying again. Oh, come on, Susie, let's go to bed. It's this is boring. No, this is something you need to understand, because it's not just important that you know this, it's important you know it for a reason. A very huge reason. Because if you don't learn this and you don't heed this, you're going to continue to die and get sick. I've come to understand that one of the most important reasons why human beings are so sick all the time is because of this one big lie. And, well, there's many of them, as we've already found out, but this is a big one. People believe that you need salt in your diet. And for some strange reason, we have salt everywhere in our diet. But yet here is the proof that we shouldn't be doing it. Real food doesn't have salt. Now, if you can look this up on Google or whatever, but they'll tell you that the paleo man, whatever that means, people that had the paleo diet, this is one of their words, So we'll go by their words, because we're in this little hologram that they put us in, and so we're all kind of thinking in those terms. So all right, we'll use their word, paleo man. What does that mean? It means people before the Great Deception, before they all started living in cities and doing agriculture, pre-agricultural humans, hunter-gatherers. Well, they ate vegetables and fruits and nuts. And if they didn't know it, who would know? If you're just a hunter-gatherer, you're not scientists living around dissecting fruit. But it turns out there is no salt in fruit and nuts and vegetables. Very, very small trace minerals trace amounts of this salt. Very, very little. Maybe 50 milligrams. And they're telling you that you need, I mean, in most fruits and vegetables have almost close to no salt, but there might be a few. I think asparagus has a little bit of salt. Eggs have a little salt, but most everything else doesn't. There's a couple of other foods that escapes me. Natural raw foods, they don't have salt. So the hunter-gatherers then would eat fruits and nuts and vegetables, and they didn't get any salt in their diet. They're saying, the scientists are saying, that paleographic, the hunter-gatherers got about maybe 500 milligrams a day of salt. And I think that's pushing it, because there's such a small amount of salt in natural foods. Fish, meat doesn't have much salt. Nothing that is actual food has any salt. But because they ate the fruit and the vegetables, they got lots of potassium. Because in nature, a peach has like 500, 600, 700 milligrams of potassium, and probably 10 milligrams of salt or less or something. I don't know the exact number, but it's very little. So what we're finding is in actual food, in nature, God put your potassium salt ratio somewhere between 50, 1 in 50, or, you know, 1 in 300 or something. I mean, we're talking about a great discrepancy, that you need lots of potassium but very little salt. Now, of course, again, they didn't know this back there in the days of the hunter-gatherer, but the scientists today that are telling us we should take 2,500, 3,000. I mean, Americans are eating like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 milligrams of salt every day. Okay. And, okay, if your body, it requires 1 to 50, you need way more potassium. But we're not eating any fruit, which is where potassium is. Nuts, meat, all food, seeds. All food has potassium. Anything that's called a food has to have potassium and calcium and phosphorus and sulfur. Magnesium and zinc. This is what a food is, because your body needs this. The 7 minerals that your body must have, as we've said before, is number 1, potassium in the greatest amounts, and then sulfur and phosphorus and calcium and magnesium and zinc and selenium. All the rest are trace minerals that we need out of that. But in this elemental chart, the way nature works, it has a very critical ratio in food. Foods that have lots of potassium may have a little more salt. They have less potassium, they have less salt. Because it's critical for your health. It is life. Because what we're going to find out, even from the Bible, is that salt is critical to life in a specific manner. It must be used wisely. It means life or death. So you eat a peach, a banana, a watermelon, a nut, and there's lots of potassium and very little salt, and therefore your body has life. Why? Because energy needs to flow through, has to flow, and as we know, flowing energy is from negative to positive, or from positive to negative. sometimes. You can charge or you can release. But the flow of electricity is what is life all about. You got to recharge and you got to expend energy. And so whenever you probably noticed it when you eat a lot of salt, you start filling up your body with water. It retains salt. Now remember, there's a couple of words here we got to define a little more clear. Salt literally means minerals. It doesn't mean sodium. Although, usually, like sea salt and regular salt that people have used for years, there's more sodium than anything else, and also chloride. But sea salt's unprocessed, and so it's got all these other minerals with it. But all the trace minerals, and they're supposed to be trace minerals. You wouldn't want there to be a whole bunch of tin or boron or something like that. But I mean, it's not going to have water in it because the water's evaporated. The ocean had water in it, evaporated, and then what's left is the minerals. So it's not going to have helium that went up right in the air. It's going to have calcium. It's going to have metal. It's going to have all these minerals, and it's going to get all the way up to salt or sodium, excuse me. And then that's where it stops. Okay, then that means that as soon as that sodium comes into contact with anything that is higher above that, like water, it's going to retain it. It's going to clamp onto it. It's going to absorb it. It's going to form a conduit of energy. So it's going to retain water. That's why if you have hard water, a lot of minerals in your water, and you put salt in there, it gets rid of the minerals because water follows salt. So it's a mechanism. And in your cells, there's a little mechanism whereby you take of potassium to push out the poisons. And it uses water to do this, to dissolve the poisons. Potassium, then, food, is something that your cell needs, and it sucks it in. It receives it. It's almost like receiving energy. And then at the very moment, your body has a certain mechanism that as soon as you receive potassium, you expel salt. It'll conserve salt if you don't get any potassium. This is why we're not dead right now, because we're not getting any potassium, not getting enough calcium and phosphorus and sulfur, because we're not eating food. We're eating mostly candies and chemicals and garbages. And so, we don't have enough potassium. We need thousands of milligrams of potassium, and we're not doing it. It's really sad. So if we don't have much potassium, we can't expel the salt. And the salt is going to start building up in your body. What does salt do? Go out in your yard, take some salt, pour it on your grass. Within a very short time, probably starting within 30 minutes, you'll notice that the grass is going to die. Because it takes the water out of the plant. It dries it up. It's gone. It's deadly. But you need a little salt because why? Because you do need to get the water out of your body to create a proper flow of energy. But if you had too much salt, it would be like a zap. It would be like sucking and just taking all the energy right out of you, drying you up, wrinkling you, giving you what we call, this is the process of aging. In other words, we're being misinformed. We're not aging at all. But from thousands of years ago, mankind decided not to eat the food that we're supposed to eat, the natural food that is perfect, that continues this process of just enough salt in the food to get the flow of the potassium into your cell. That is the proper amount of energy flow, which will burn at steady pace the proteins and fats to give you life in each little factory, little cell. If you start changing the balance between salt and potassium, or one end of the spectrum to the other end, because salt is way up near the area where water is. That's why we salute and we bring our arm up to our forehead. Salt. That's also the word sun. But remember, salt just means minerals. But there is a mineral that we think of as salt because there's so much sodium in salt, the kind of salt we use. But salt always meant minerals. So in the Bible, salt means that. It means sodium chloride and all the trace minerals together. And it was spoken of very favorably because it is a preservative. And so therefore, even the word salvation comes from the word salt. What does salvation mean? It means preservation. To be preserved. To be stable. Salt was so important for the last thousands of years that in Roman times they paid people their wages in salt. And this is why we have the word salary. You say, well, give me my salary. Salary glands, the salt glands, the mineral glands. See, we want our salary, we want our salt. So they convinced people because it was like a drug. That was the first, kind of one of the first drugs they ever foisted upon mankind and deceived mankind into thinking they needed it. They were addicted to it. They were addicted to the flavor. Not that it has a good flavor really, but it certainly is addictive. And it could be used to preserve food. If you put the salt on the outside of the food, then it would preserve it. Because it kills everything. It kills the bacteria. It kills everything living. See? So if you got bacteria on your fish, or, you know, you would pack the fish in salt. Now that doesn't mean that when you eat the fish, it's going to be more salt. You wash the salt off, and when you eat it, salt was never something you're supposed to eat. The Bible doesn't say anything about put salt in your soup. The Bible doesn't say anything about eating salt. It says you need the salt to preserve. We are the salt of the world. If we lose our saltiness, then it's good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled on. It's worthless. If you're a Christian and you're not helping to give salvation to people, if you're not helping them to be preserved, then you're worthless. But no, the Bible doesn't say we're supposed to eat salt. That's not what they originally did with salt. They just preserved things. It was very important because it was a preservative. So, this is where we eat. Today we say hello. That comes from the word halo, which is above, which is from the word helium, which is the top of the elemental wheel. Salute, hello, salutations, salvation, and that sal is also the word we get after long, generations of misspelling the word. That's the word soul or sun. So it's at the top, right where the water is. So water is the only thing missing, and the helium and the higher things above the salt, which is going to be attracted to it. So this is the mechanism that the Bible has. It's simply built right into the genes and into nature, into science. So you don't have to wonder, well, let's see, how much salt do I need and how much potassium do I need? You don't have to do that. You just eat fruit, nuts, and vegetables. Come on. Come on. Yeah, there's a car coming. Be careful. So you go out and eat your banana and your nuts and your potatoes and vegetables and, you know, watercress, and dandelion roots, and all these things. And you have the exact ratio that you need. And you're healthy. And you have the absolute flow of salt leaving your body, taking with it all of the toxins, and it's a mechanism that works really well. While it allows the energy to flow through your cells and burn the fuel, it's also getting rid of toxins and stuff. Huh, look at this. Oh. This little guy. Such a beautiful thing. Alright, well, let's get you off the road here so you don't get hurt. Anyway. So, it's a delicate balance, isn't it? And it's not some minor little inconvenience. Oh, well, we're getting a little too much salt. That's okay. No. Very, very serious. You know, for thousands of years, people just die. You know, they just die. A lot of people who use a lot of salt, you look in their skin and they're just all wrinkled and dried up. It's very serious. Drying them out. And it's not just getting rid of the water in your body, but it's literally the more salt, then the faster that your body's going to need more potassium. And even if you could supply your body with a lot of potassium, sometimes doctors will tell you that, well, you've got too much salt, just add more potassium to your diet. Well, that helps a little bit, because otherwise you're going to be potassium deficient, and you don't want to do that at all, because your body absolutely requires potassium. But it's a little more complicated than that, because if you're adding more potassium, then the potassium's going through, and it's still coming up against all this salt that you got in there that you're not supposed to have. And so then, what's it doing? Well, it just keeps going, flowing, faster and faster and faster, because it has to keep the ratio. So, depending on how much, so let's say you just put half the amount of potassium in your body that you need, but 2 times, 3 times more salt. Well, then your body can't get rid of the salt. It needs the potassium to get rid of the salt, because the balance is the flow. So you need both for the flow, pushing the salt out and bringing this potassium in. So if you don't have enough potassium, then the salt stays in your body, and your kidneys regulate that in your bloodstream to get it perfect. Has to be. It's very important for it to be perfect. The vital things in your life have to be absolutely perfect, or else you'll die immediately. So in your blood, it's going to keep the pH balance where it should be, and the salt levels. That's how the kidneys do it. They put salt into the blood. Your blood's kind of salty. Well, if you have too much salt going through a lot, drinking your electrolytes, and you start sweating, then it's getting rid of a lot of the water real quickly, and your salivary glands are going to be salty. But your your urine is going to be salty, really salty, but it doesn't have to be. You shouldn't be releasing that much salt, because you shouldn't have that much salt in your body. So if you're releasing a lot of salt because you have a lot of potassium, okay, now at least you're getting rid of it, but that flow is too quick, shorting out your cells. It's too hot. You're burning too hot. The problem is most people will not, not only do they have too much salt, they don't have nearly enough potassium, because they're not eating vegetables and fruits and nuts. They're eating preserved meats that have lots of salt, like preserved ham and pork and bacon. and all various kinds of lunch meats and hot dogs and sausages and things. You know, and so you're just getting way too much salt, and there's no potassium because they put the salt in the meat and it got rid of the potassium in your food. So you put the salt on your nuts and now you've lost the ratio. Your nuts had a lot of potassium and very little, almost no salt. Now you salt, you cook, you roast your nuts, get rid of all the bacteria and all the good stuff and throw salt all over it. Now you extract the potassium, what's left out of it. This is your diet, and so you're getting very little potassium and calcium and sulfur and phosphorus and stuff, and you're just getting mostly salt. So salt stays in your body, can't get out. Now, and it may preserve by killing the bacteria. It may be a good disinfectant, and that might be good in a sense in your gut, but it's also not allowing the minerals to flow. And as we said, it's drying you up, shriveling you up and short-circuiting your, you know, there's no, if the salt don't leave, then there's no flow. So you have like a dead battery is what you're doing. You need, it's like a battery, you need a certain amount of acid in your battery for it to draw from one plate, the cadmium, to the nickel, to make a flow of electricity. So you put some sort of acid, kind of a saline. So it's very important that you get the proper balance. So paleo man got maybe 500 milligrams, and we're getting 3,000 or 4,000 milligrams. Paleo man might have gotten 500 milligrams of salt. That's what they're saying. I don't know. But they got thousands of more milligrams of potassium. They got the right balance because they ate berries and fruit and nuts. But you're eating your nuts roasted and salted. So what you're doing is you're aging and dying. And this is no joke. Literally, this is killing you. You can't live over 70 years if you salt your food. If you eat salted preserved ham, or and say, well, wait a minute, now hold on, Dave. Maybe they got salt some other way, right? Didn't they? Well, how about sea salt? You know, isn't that all over the ocean, right? So fish that are in the ocean, they must have a lot of salt. No, actually, salmon live in the ocean, and they travel up the rivers as well. They'll cross over from a salt area to a freshwater area. And they've done research and found that the salmon don't have any more salt in their flesh when they go into the ocean. They live there, or they grow into, either way, the living creature is living and has the ability to get rid of the salt. There's no salt inside the fish. Very little salt inside a fish, even in the ocean. And so, well, how about seaweed? There's a lot of vegetables that are in the ocean. They must have a lot of salt. Well, kelp and, you know, seaweed and stuff has a little bit of minerals. You know, they have sometimes they even dry out kelp, make little powdered kelp and sprinkle it on your food, and it tastes like salt. Well, it's a little salty tasting because it's mostly minerals. Salt, that's what salt is, but it's not as much, it doesn't have as much sodium. The amount that seaweed and kelp, the amount of sodium it actually has, and chloride, is very little, just like any other plant. So no, all plants and all foods and all fish and all things that are made on this earth, designed to be eaten, have very little salt and high content of potassium and the other minerals. Huh. Let's see if we can go this way. So, you know, so it's pretty evident then that if you were living off the land and you weren't putting, going out into the deserts and scraping up minerals off the ground, putting into little salt shakers, and distributing it all around the world, something kind of unnatural to do. But if you were just living on the earth by yourself, there was no factories and no civilization, you'd just go out and eat a fish. You'd eat a peach or a banana. And you simply would not get any salt. Very, very little. A few milligrams, not thousands of milligrams. And you would be getting lots of potassium. So therefore, do you imagine in your mind, in that natural cycle of life, that it would be unhealthy? You even see farmers putting salt licks out for their cows, because we're so convinced in this crazy world that scientists and all the medical doctors and scientists and everybody has convinced the entire world that without salt, if we don't give those cows can't just eat grass and leaves, why, they'll die without salt. We got to go put a salt lick out there in the field. Well, of course the cows love it. They'll go out there and lick on it. And if you say, well, Dave, we've proven scientifically that the cattle need salt in their diet. They get sick, Well, I don't know. I imagine they want those cattle to be fat and bloated. And maybe if they get more salt, they're going to need more potassium. So therefore, maybe the cows will eat more. I don't know what their thinking is. But I know lots of deer that eat in the wild and don't have salt licks, and they're perfectly fine. But yeah, the cows can get addicted to salt just like humans. But when you go to the store and you get a bag of chips, it's just covered in salt. It doesn't matter if it's sea salt. You're not supposed to eat all that salt. Now, if you're going to have some salt in your house, you should definitely use sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, or any kind of sea salt, because it's not processed. And not only that, the regular salt, that's why they put iodine in salt. You say, why would they just think of iodine, in salt? Why not put iodine in your milk or something? I don't know why. Well, because iodine is a mineral that's, we don't have enough of it, and so they have to put minerals back into the salt, because after they process it, they soak it in bleach, just like with white flour or white sugar. It's just an extraction of some sort of, it's just a deadly, it's not a natural thing, because it doesn't have the processing gets rid of the other trace minerals. So it's just the sodium and the chloride, which chloride is a total poison. You don't need much of that at all. You don't need much of salt at all, actually. But so, there could be a situation where you could use salt as a medicine for a very short period of time. I mean, and I don't know how good this is for your body, but I do know that people sometimes will take a whole teaspoon of salt and mix it in some warm water and drink it. And then it makes them have a bowel movement, and they claim that it flushes out all the toxins in there. And that might work, because it certainly does flush. Like I said, salt will bring with it the water, and with it other heavy minerals and things, that will just flush it out like the hard water in your house. So that could be, if you did it once or twice or something, it might be. And then once you flushed your body of all of these minerals and stuff, and then you kind of started over and started eating right, it might be all right. I don't know. I'm not going to say that's a good, I'm not certain, because I've never done that. But, I mean, that's kind of like saying, well, you're upset to your stomach, you can stick your finger down your throat and throw up, and maybe that's a good thing. But I wouldn't do that very often, because you can get bulimia. It's a disease. And you won't be able to keep your food down. It's not something you're supposed to do unless it's an emergency. And of course, there's a use for salt. It's a preservative. You put it on the meat. I mean, my dad did this. I've talked about this before. For years, my dad would go hunt. Him and his brother, my uncle, they would go hunting. They'd always get a deer each, carry it out of the woods on their back. And as soon as they brought it home, they'd skin it out. They'd skin it, take out all the organs, usually before they even brought it back. They'd come walking in with these deer on their back, and my mom and my uncle's wife, my aunt, they would throw some white, I don't know why they always use white, I guess that's what their sheets were, white. They throw them over the table and they throw that deer on there and cut it all up. There's blood everywhere, and it was just terrible. But anyway, after they'd gut it out and skin it, they'd get salt and pour the salt all over it. And put salt inside of it, in the carcass, inside the crevice of the chest cavity. And then they'd wrap that sheet around it, I think a different fresh sheet, and hang it up from a tree. And this is usually sometime in the fall. It's not yet cold, there's not even snow on the ground. And they would hang it up, and that salt would keep the bacteria from growing, so it would preserve the meat. And that meat would hang out there all winter. They'd go out and take a slice off anytime they wanted it. It was more or less fermenting from within. The natural bacteria inside the meat would ferment the meat. And that's how they used to make salami, and in the old world they ate fermented meat. But putting and adding the salt, they did that with fish too. I mean, we still do that with fish. You catch the fish and you cover them with salt, and you can get them to market, preserve them. But when you get that fish home after it's been salted, you wash the fish off. The salt goes down the sink, down the drain. You don't eat the salt. Salt is for preservation, and that's what Christians are. Salvation, preservation, that's the same word. Salutations, hello. You put the halo on it. the preservation over it, you protect it with the halo. It's a beautiful thing. But you don't eat the salt. You can do it, you can get away with it a few times, you know. Kind of a little bit of an imbalance in your system for a while, but your body will push the salt out. And as long as you're eating a good diet normally, then you'll get plenty of potassium to go in, and it'll just sort of go through and perhaps cleanse your body a little bit. It works in that manner. Every time you get a little too much salt, your body will push it through. As long as you keep eating fruits and vegetables and nuts, you'll get lots of potassium. Your body will work good. So if you don't heed this, if you don't say you don't believe me, that's why I've told you in this way. I didn't say, look, there was a study done where if you eat so much salt, it makes so many people, and this, you know, group over here, and seniors and young ones and whatever, and we did studies in this category and people died, or what. I didn't give you any information like that, because that's meaningless to us. I think that the clearest evidence that we're not supposed to eat salt is just in the sense that no food on earth has salt. And so therefore, the only possible way, if salt was required for your health, if you had to eat salt every day, if you were supposed to eat it, I would think it would be in the food already. I wouldn't think, unless you can say, well, yeah, but that's why, see, we have salt on the ground. We go out and gather it up, and we have to add it to our food. God knew that, you know, it didn't have it in there, but that was one of those things we have to just go and figure it out, you know. Go get salt. Well, that would mean God was for marketing, right? Because maybe you lived in an area where you didn't have any salt. You didn't live in the desert or near an ocean, or so, you know, people living in the hills like in Tennessee, they didn't get any salt and they die right young. But the people who lived on the ocean would live long. No, that's not even true. Usually people that live near the ocean get all wrinkly. Maybe they get salt, maybe they use salt water to wash their face with, and it dries out their skin. Or they're in the desert at the bottom of an ancient salt lake. But salt's never been good or healthy in any shape, way, or form. It can preserve you. It can keep the bacteria away. Peroxide can disinfect, but we don't drink peroxide. This is deadly. You can put it on your skin to disinfect, but you don't bathe in it. You don't daily put doses of peroxide all over you, or wash with alcohol, which also does the same kind of thing. Dries things out, evaporates real quickly, so it, you know, alcohol, so therefore it takes the moisture out of your skin too. And by the way, a lot of your skin creams are made with alcohol, which is not, you know, you think it's helping you because, oh look, it feels so good when I put it on, you know, and it gets right into my skin. What you don't understand is that over a period of weeks, months, it's drying out your skin. Oh, they got a clever little game they play with you. They say, oh, you need to go get Jergens. Moisturize your skin. Look on the back of that and see what it's made out of. Petroleum. Petroleum jelly. And if you have to get something like that, always use mineral oil. Probably better than petroleum oil. But I wouldn't use anything like that. In Bible times, they used olive oil. Olive oil is a nutrient that absorbs into the skin and is good for you. And in fact, the types of bacteria that's in the olive oil is actually almost identical to the bacteria that's necessary for your skin to keep it protected. We have a certain layer of bacteria on your skin that protects you. So if you want to protect your skin and decrease the wrinkles and so forth, you need to moisturize with olive oil. And coconut oil is another good one. Coconut oil, real 100% natural organic coconut oil or olive oil can be helpful. Now you say, well, olive oil doesn't smell good, doesn't feel good very well, you know, maybe it's a little harder to use. I don't like that. Well, make your own. Get some olive oil or some coconut oil if you prefer, because it might smell better. And put some fragrance in it, some natural. Some myrrh, a little cinnamon or something, whatever, to make it more fragrant. And make your own little moisturizing cream for your face and your hands. But for God's sake, don't be putting alcohol on your skin every day or petroleum jelly. You know, they make petroleum jelly as a lubricant for bolts and nuts and engines. It's not made for your skin. So we've been lied to about that. and obviously you say, well, yeah, well, they wouldn't lie to us, Dave. Well, see how it's necessary for them to lie to you about this? Because they can get you, so if they're going to sell you a product to put on your skin, they're going to need you to be dry. So you're going to want and need their product to keep moist. I used to tell my daughter, same thing about chapstick. I never had chapped lips. First of all, I just practiced good practices where I didn't lick my lips in the wind all the time. Wasn't constantly licking my lips. I didn't have that habit. I used to tell my daughter that she'd want chapstick. She'd always get chapstick. I always tell her, once you put that chapstick on, then you're always going to have, almost looks like a turtle, don't it? You're always going to have chapped lips. It just never goes away after that. You got to learn how to have the right moisture. You put a lot of water on even washing your face all the time in your hands is going to cause dry skin, because you say, well, I'm moisturizing and put water on my skin. Well, it's a lot better than if you're putting chemicals and dish soap and stuff like that on your skin. Of course, you want to wash your body every day with warm water, but you don't want to just sit there and constantly be washing. And we're not fish. We don't live in the water, and so the water will dry out your skin, especially certain kinds of water, hard water and stuff. But so you wash your body with warm water. That's all you need. If it doesn't smell good enough for you, if you still smell like a human afterwards and you want to smell better, well, from ancient times they used to use certain oils and fragrance that they would put on their body. But you don't need a dish soap that strips rust off of a nut and smells like lilacs. You don't need that to wash your body. You're just simply drying out your skin. And that's important because your skin is your armor. It's protecting your whole body. So if you don't have that protection around your skin, you can get infected. And it's causing problems with UV, ultraviolet radiation, and maybe you start looking bad and breaking out in some sort of rash, and it's not going to be a good thing at all, because that's your first protection. So see, what we're finding out, it always ends up that you got to have common sense, and you just use things that are natural. It's always about just being natural, isn't it? See these beautiful flowers? Nobody planted this. This is far more beautiful than any garden. Well, I mean, sure, you can plant some purple flowers in there and make a hedge and probably make it very pretty, but I'm not denying that gardens can't be made and grown and beautiful, but nature does a pretty good job all by its little lonesome, making things right. And it really is not much, we have nothing to worry about. Everything's always provided for us. Nature has it all taken care of. You don't have to, the old pioneers would come through and there'd be no people in this area. And they'd see a place like this, a beautiful meadow and some flowers and some good drinking water in the creek, and they'd set up a little lean-to, and they wouldn't stay there the rest of their lives. They were hunter-gatherers. They would set up a tent like the Native Americans and live there for the summer or something. In the winter, they'd go down into the valleys, travel. They were gypsies. They followed the weather and the fruit, and they got to see things. And there's a mushroom. So it was a beautiful way to live. It's always exciting. People were concentrating on a daily basis on what to eat for the day, for that day. They weren't worried about what's going to happen next year. What if the economy goes down? The economy would never go down, because this is not ever going to go down unless human beings get to the point where we've just been deceived so much that we start putting salt on our food and eating it, poison, thinking that we need it, like it's some sort of, you've got to have thousands of milligrams, David, or you'll be sick. Look, I actually found where doctors and stuff are admitting now. Well, actually, there's two different groups of people that are, one group is saying we need, I think, 2,500 or 3,000 milligrams a day. But there's I don't know which organization or office of the government is saying this, but the other group is saying, no, it's probably like 1,500. But then if you get the reading and doing some research, you're saying, no, really, actually, there's no proof that we need any more than 500. In fact, And see, but they don't go far enough. They don't say, well, yeah, we've actually done some research and found out it's harmful. They do tell you that you need the ratio between the potassium, and they say you should get more potassium. But what does that mean when you tell somebody you need more potassium? Well, what's potassium? Well, it's a little mineral. Well, where do I get it? Oh, well, that's pretty tricky, boy. I don't know. You don't have any peaches where you're at, huh? You don't have any apples and fruits and nuts. Well, so, I guess you'll have to take a pill. This is complicated. Deer tracks, I see. You know, it's just... all I have to do is tell somebody, listen, go eat fruit and nuts and veggies. You see, but the reason they don't do that is because if doctors were telling people that, then it's basically what they're saying is that it's not healthy for you to live in the city. You need to go out into the country and live off the land, when they can't tell people that. That blows their whole cover, isn't it? The Romans were paying them in salt. These idiots thought they needed it. So they would work night and day like slaves to get some salt. Because they thought, oh my God, if we don't have salt, we can't have our salty French fries. You know, Willa makes some great potatoes. She boils them in hydrogenated fat and dumps salt all over them. And they're delicious. And my family loves them. And I have to go work 8 hours a day for this stuff. Give me my salt, my celery. What a scam. So the Romans were giving them salt that they had Roman legions. They could go out into the desert and scrape the salt up off the ground, put it in buckets, and bring it back and give it to them. And they were happy. Because their wives were probably back home on the farm. They didn't really need food. But boy, they needed something. They needed, you know, they traded and stuff like the things they didn't have at the time, like cannabis. So we need some of that, you know. Maybe they could grow that. But one thing that you couldn't grow was salt. So if you lived in an area where you didn't have any, it was very, very precious because, yeah, it was used for preserving, but people got used to it. They got to thinking they had to have it. And this has been going on for a long time. That's why in the very first book of the Bible, that God, Yahweh, he says to Adam and Eve, after they ate from knowledge and began to become like God, and he got pretty jealous. He says, my name is jealous. That's my name. And I'm angry. And in his fury, he drove them out of the garden. And he cursed the ground. He cursed the man. He cursed the woman. And this is in his wrath, he said, you shall not enter into my rest. The Bible says, I will punish you into the 3rd and the 4th generation. You know, 3 or 4 times you got to come back to this world. 3 or 4 generations. You know, and you get punished every time. You got to come back and pay the last farthing. You get stuck in this cycle. But he tells Adam, he says, I've cursed the ground on thine account. Thorns and thistles it will grow for thee. You'll be an agriculturalist. You'll, by the sweat of your face, you'll cultivate the ground. And you shall eat bread until you die. You know, I don't want you to live forever. See, that tree of life, you know, now that you're a God, right, you could eat from the tree of life in the garden, in this beautiful natural setting, and you could live forever. But he cast him out. He says, I want you to go and start making this bread until you die. You're going to eat that. That's lacham. Cham means burned. Shem, Cham, and Japheth. Cham is the burnt. The dark, brown, charred. And so he says, I want you to work like a slave and get these little pieces of grain, process them and burn them in the oven, and that'll kill you. I don't want you to have eternal life. And we've been doing it. Orders from headquarters for the last several thousand years. Now remember, there was a time when humans lived to be hundreds of years, thousands. Some of the ancient records say for many thousands of years. But ever since we started eating this burned processed food, we started putting salt and, you know, I mean, they weren't just mining salt. They were extracting sugar from the cane and doing all kinds of shenanigans, forbidding us to use the natural herbs, and then taking the herbs into a laboratory and extracting the ingredient that would make us addicted and high, but taking out all the minerals and the rest of the plant, you know, that is the whole plant. Things that, taking out the potassium and just giving you the salt. So they knew that that would kill you. And, you know, we've never been any wiser. We've never been the wiser. We've always just assumed, to this very day, people are running around pouring salt. People who study the subject, you know, doing research. Oh, I found out the body needs salt, and it's very important, and it's so healthy for you. And, you know, I went to the doctor, and he says my ratio of salt is great. You know, it's wonderful. No, they looked to see what the ratio is, and it was in their levels and standards. But, you know, they never, of course, told you why you're aging and dying. That probably is why. They're just telling you lies. So, if salt kills grass on contact, basically, if salt extracts all the moisture out of your skin, if salt expels and sucks out all the potassium and something you need at a far greater scale than you need, and if no food that is called a food has any real amount of salt in it, and the ratio between salt and potassium is that actually that great, then we have absolute certainty that we should not put any added salt in our food. And I mean, the whole thing is, what we've been saying is that we need to eat natural foods. A lot of it needs to be uncooked. You can cook food and then let it cool down and eat it a day later. Cooking can be sometimes used to process, you know, if you have some roots that are, you can't just sometimes you can't even go out and get a dandelion root and chew on that, really. You chew it up and it's too much fiber. You can't really eat roots. Leaves and roots are an herb for the healing of the nations. They're not really food. So you put ginger root in your food, or onions or garlic. It's a medicine. But you don't live on garlic. You don't live on ginger. And you don't even live on potatoes and carrots. You need fruits and vegetables and nuts. You need a fruit, something that grows on the tree, because when you pick a fruit or nut, it doesn't kill or harm the tree. It's the offspring. That's why in Genesis chapter 1 it says, I give unto you all the fruit, PR in Hebrew, that's PR, per. So we get the word prune, pear, apple, berry, even the word fruit, which is, you know, pH, fruit. All those words come from the original PR with no vowels, the two consonants, PR, pear, prunes. And those, he says, you will eat the fruit or the offspring with the seed therein. Because it means the seed therein means the offspring. So you don't uproot the tree, take the roots and it dies. That's not how we're, as humans, we're not designed to eat that way. We're designed to eat the fruit and the nuts. But the leaves and the roots are for the healing of the nations. So they're herbs. Those are herbs, vegetables. And so some of the herbs and leaves have to be cooked or made into teas or soups in order to get to extract the medicine from it. So you take cannabis and you make a tea, or you boil it in oil, and you're extracting the cannabinoids. And that's the medicine. Or if you're doing it with coca leaves, you can make a tea with that, or soup, and it can give you well-being and medicinal properties. Or the dandelion roots, or the things like that. So I think it's important that we heed this. This is probably one of the more important things that we're going to, along with drinking plenty. Now, a lot of people are going out and they're thinking, oh, we got to have this very alkaline water. We got to you go to the health food store and they're like, oh, we got water that's it's a 9. Right? Your body needs to be 7.5. It doesn't need to be 9. And you shouldn't drink very alkaline water. That's too alkaline. It's like same thing we were talking about. You too much salt, too much potassium. Where do we have a balance? You need normal water, well water, 7.5. Mineral spring water. That's the kind of thing you put in your body. You don't want to drink some kind of liquid that's very acidic, nor do you want it to be very alkaline. That's not healthy. So I've said many times before, you can go to the Family Dollar and they sell crystal geyser water. It's $1 for a gallon. It's quite cheap, and it's good mineral water. And it's a 7 or 7.3 or something. It's just exactly what water should be, what mineral water should be, and that's what you should be drinking. Something like that. Or well water if you can get it. So everything in nature works the same way. This is how we know that what we're saying is true. We need a balanced water. We need a balanced diet of fruit, nuts, and vegetables, which doesn't have any salt. And we need to stop believing and trusting in the elite who are trying to kill us. And so we need to put only olive oil or cotton or coconut oil or some kind of natural oil on our skin. Natural fragrances and flowers and things. And stop dumping alcohol products and petroleum jellies all over our skin. Just basic common sense. You're going to look better. The wrinkles are going to go away. Poisons are going to get out of your system with that natural balance of salt in very small trace amounts and high amounts of potassium and the rest of the 7 minerals and the rest of them trace. Then you're going to have the proper balance in your bones. You're not going to have this huge disease that goes by so many different names called the autoimmune deficiency in their words, which is simply inflammation of the joints and the tissues, and it's caused from the imbalance of our food, partly from too much salt and things like salt. As we said, it isn't just salt. Other chemicals can dehydrate you. Alcohol and things like that, and cigarettes and nicotine. All of these kinds of things do some similar things. And they dehydrate us and they age us, and that's what aging is. Aging is when your cells are no longer reproducing in their proper wholeness, in a healthy way, but they're manufactured and mutant, and you're building up toxins, and then you don't get the right minerals, you're short-circuiting, you're imbalanced, then your genes are not blooming and opening. They're not being activated. So some of your genes are mutating, and that's what we call cancer. And some of the cells are mutating, exploding, and dehydrating, and that's what we call inflammation. And they want to use big words and talk about free radicals and blah, 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 and you got to have this chemical and squared by pi, and forget all that. Just go out and eat some vegetables, friends, and some fruit, and some, the herbs, for the healing of the body. Just about every culture has their particular little pet herb. that they know, that every culture knows they need to keep themselves more alkaline. You know, and the Germans will use the onions, and you know, the French use the garlic, and the Italians, and in India they use the curry, and you know, and China it's the ginseng, and Mexico it's the peppers, but all of these things are all, each and every one of them, very, very good for you as a medicine. And we've got to keep the balance. And friends, we can live very long time. I just saw a video about a guy who was 109, and this guy smoked 12 cigars a day for many, many years, and he's still 109 years old, looks good, walking, still driving. He was an African-American man, he was 109 years old. Amazing wisdom. And they asked him, what did you do? You lived so long. And he's like, I smoked 12 cigars a day, but he says, I never inhaled. That's the key. You don't want to inhale that smoke. Well, he's right about that. I'm surprised he lived that long, actually. He never pointed out anything really special, other than the fact he said he went to church every day. And I think the key there was he had friends, and he had a good life. He wasn't unhappy. He had a friend. They weren't married. I guess his girlfriend was 90-something, and he was 109, so he called her a young girl. But they had a good life, and they got along well. And they'd go to church together, and had a happy life. So well-being, happiness doesn't always just come from having a good life. Sometimes it has to do with not being sick, so you can get out, get in the sunshine, the fresh air. So the man probably did some things he didn't even know what it was he was doing. But he lived to be 109. That's not that long. My point is that can you imagine if he'd ate right and didn't smoke all the cigars, how long that man would be living? I know another guy that's like 115 years old, and he was also a black guy. And he was vegetarian. Mostly. He did eat fish and stuff, I think, a little bit. I think he ate some lamb. But he ate a lot of vegetables and stuff. And he had some similar stories. Went to church every day. But can you imagine, like I said, we talked about that guy. I don't know if it was Japan or China, but the guy was 150 years old when he died. And he used to drink sake every day. So, you know, you don't have to, it's not like you can't have any fun. I mean, you can drink a glass of wine, but you know, you have to do things in balance and figure out what's really what. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go, friends. David Vos. I hope this video was helpful. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one.